Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. As you already know, this is your U.S. General. 5-drawer tool card with side tray and deep compartment. Today is Thursday, as you can see. We just now making it back over to the storage unit, getting back to it, getting busy as always. Okay. In today's video presentation, I would like to rekindle a little bit on a previous video that I uploaded to the YouTube platform roughly around last week sometime, concerning younger technicians looking to pursue a career in the automotive service field. All right. In one of those particular videos, I believe it was part 2, I demonstrated it and showed quite a few different tools, just as well as some cordless tools and some pneumatic impact tools. Right. I want to touch back a little bit in that area due to the fact that I had a little short conversation with a gentleman on another fellow content creator's channel in the comments, and a question was asked, whether air is dead and whether cordless is now beating out pneumatic impacts. Okay. So this is just to put out some informative information for some of them younger technicians that's looking to come into the field and looking to come into the trade. Most of the older technicians and older mechanics is going to know, where this conversation is about to go. I am going to demonstrate quite a few things. In this particular video, this will be a personal opinion of mine. I'm quite sure, everybody else out there has their own opinions when it comes to certain particular things and their methods and, how they go about handling their business when they do so. All right. But I ain't going to hold you up too much more longer in the introductory of things. But as I always state as usual, I always keep my signature lingering somewhere in the background. My Dunkin' Donuts coffee. You already know. Okay. So pretty much I'm about to get some contents out, about to get quite a few things out to the top of the tool cart. So we're going to dive right in. So walk with me. Let's get it. All right, this is going to be for the younger technicians. The very first thing what I'm going to do in this particular video is I'm going to introduce and demonstrate a little bit what is sitting at the top of the tool cart so that you get a little familiar with things, just in case, it's an individual out there who is unfamiliar with them. All right. What I'm going to do is I'm going to start over here, and what you're taking a look at is what is called a pneumatic impact wrench. Okay. This is a 1/2-inch drive. The brand is an INGERSOLL RAND. The brands that you are taking a look at amongst the top of the tool cart is INGERSOLL, RAND, and MILWAUKEE, but the discussion is not based upon the brands because there are many different type of brands and selections to choose from out there. Okay. What you're taking a look at here is also an INGERSOLL RAND. Okay. This is a different design testically compared to this design. Both guns are 3/8 drive. All right. This is the 215, and this is a stubby, which is all 3/8 drive and 1/2-inch drive. All right. What you're taking a look at right here is an M12 Milwaukee die grinder, which is a cordless die grinder that's provided by a battery source. Just as well as you're taking a look at here is the Milwaukee 3/8 drive, okay, which is also a cordless version. And this is your Milwaukee 1/2-inch drive, all right, which has a 5.0 battery, and the stubby actually has a 4.0 battery on it at the prior moment. All right. So the question is that, whether air was dead in shops and whether cordless, is outweighing and outbeating and performing some of the air pneumatics that are out there. All right. First coming into the field, my thing is that you have to sit back and you have to take a look at what type of work that you choose, and you decide and what areas of service you tend to get into. All right. When first starting off, before you get into a dealership, you have to have sometimes 2 years worth of experience with hands-on in a particular shop, some type of schooling, some type of background knowledge of working with tools, and not just knowing the tools itself, but knowing certain particular functions and services when it comes to vehicles. All right. But just hypothetically speaking, each different line of service is different. You have different types of technicians, you have different fields and different lines of work. So according to where you tend to land yourself as far as employment, right? As far as the question was concerned, whether air, is dead and whether cordless outweighs pneumatics. To give you a good example, say for instance you came into and you started off in like a tire shop, okay? Cordless would technically not necessarily be, a very good option for you to lean in the direction of. What I would state is that you would want to go to air pneumatic, okay, because you will be doing a lot of rotations and doing a lot of work, wheel balancing and things like that. So you will be using a lot of half-inch drive applications, okay? You will be performing other services at work because, you can work in a particular shop that just basically just does tires, but then you have other shops that provide other different lines of service. So if you're in a shop that provides other different lines of service other than tire removal and things like that, and say for instance you are doing oil changes or coolant flushes and just other different lines of service, then now you would start thinking about, 3/8 drive and 1/4 inch drive when it comes to cordless ratchets or pneumatic ratchets and things like that. Okay. But if you're working in something, just so to say, like a tire shop, okay, the air pneumatic will be very important because of the configuration of one shop. Each shop, as far as their configuration and layout when it comes to their air supply systems, will differ amongst shops depending upon what type of work and services that they technically provide. If you work in a shop that does tire removal, you're going to have airlines accessible to you all around the ball. So just hypothetically speaking, this is for what reason why I have a cordless Milwaukee die grinder at the top of the tool cart, because in a good vast majority of the time you will be using a die grinder, especially if you're doing wheel service, okay, to clean up wheels and things like that. So when it comes to cordless should not necessarily be, a first option, because while you're at one of those particular machines or a dismounting machine and things like that, there is going to be an airline that's connected side by side, if not, technically with the machine itself. Okay. And depending upon, the majority of work that you may technically need to do, the air is free. All right. So just hypothetically speaking, say you did have a cordless die grinder, like just so to say one of these, and you needed to perform work all day long, but you only had a certain amount of batteries. So say for instance you had two cordless and you needed to swap from tool to tool, okay, but just so to say you may technically use this tool, all right, a whole lot much more often, or very sporadically throughout your whole days of work, okay? You can't necessarily afford to take the battery from this particular tool to compensate for that tool, because this tool will drain batteries extremely fast, and you have to have the proper batteries to push this tool, which sometimes can become very expensive. The M12 battery that I actually have on this tool at the very prior moment, I have it on there for a reason, but this is not the specified battery for this particular tool, okay? This is a 2.0 battery, okay? Now, it's not to say that it wouldn't push the tool, but it's only going to push the tool to a certain extent, and it will die a whole lot much more faster. You won't get the longevity that you may technically need to get out of the tool doing a certain substantial amount of work. In its specifications, they recommend, to have a 4.0 battery, but I use 6.0 batteries with this particular tool. So when it comes to some of this cordless equipment, it will really be based upon if you can afford the battery lineup, because when using a lot of these different tools, you're not going to be able to make your way throughout a whole day's worth of work on one particular battery, or just so to say you had two batteries, swapping them between tools, but you need to use both tools periodically throughout the day. Okay, there'll be a difference if I was to hook this a 3/8 drive air pneumatic up to an air hose, okay, and I was to pull the trigger and hold the trigger for a few hours. I can hold the trigger for 24 hours. But the difference is that this anvil is not going to stop spinning until I release my finger from off the trigger, okay? You can't technically do that with these cordless tools. Before the batteries will technically, die out, it's more than likely that the tool itself will overheat and shut down before the battery cuts off on you, all right? Another thing, to keep in mention is that, just say, for instance, you jump to cordless first and you didn't ever went and obtained a pneumatic, all right? And say, for instance, you was doing a certain amount of work, and just hypothetically speaking, say you needed to use a 1/2-inch drive, and say you only technically had one battery, but you only worked on 2 to 3 cars. Each shop is different. You have some technicians who may only work on just a handful of cars, throughout the day, depending upon how slow it is. It'll be a bigger difference if you work in a high volume shop, where that now you're servicing, 13 to 15 and sometimes even more vehicles in a day's time. So when dealing with the cordless and the battery operated equipment, this is not going to hold up in an atmosphere like that. All right. This is the suggestion that I would technically tell you to lean in the direction of, as far as air pneumatics. This is why the cordless will never technically beat out the air pneumatics. All right. Same thing that goes along with a 3/8 stubby or a 1/2-inch. Say, for instance, you get through a certain amount of work throughout the day, okay, and it's time for you to clock out. Another fellow co-worker calls you over, y'all communicating, conversating, and things like that. Maybe you are cleaning up your work area, getting yourself prepared to go home, and just hypothetically, say, for instance, you leave your charging your batteries at work, and you tend to forget that, to put your batteries on a charger, and then now it's time for you to show up to work the next morning, and then you come into your shop and now you see a whole bunch of tickets on the wall, and there's a lot of work lined up for you, but now you can't get to it because basically you never put the batteries on the charger, and you lack, having a pneumatic impact. Now, in some shops, they may provide, certain shop equipment. Not all shops provide certain particular equipment. Certain equipment is required, technically for you to basically have. All right. This is, what gives you value, you know what I'm saying? And knowing your worth on a job when you have certain particular equipment to, get through a certain particular job without actually not having to ask anybody or stand around waiting for anything from the next person, okay? Because if the next person got the tool, guess what? They may possibly land that job or get that job, and then now you get left out. So, with working with some of these tools right here, it is convenient, for an individual, just so to say, like, if you're a DIYer or a home weekend warrior, all right, and hypothetically say you didn't have a home portable air compressor, this would be a good option for you to lean in. But when it comes to, certain particular tools, once again, it's a premium that it's not the tool itself, but it's the batteries and the premium that comes with the batteries in order to push the tool, in order for you to finish a certain particular type of work or a certain amount of work. Okay. So that's something, to consider right there. All right, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to get something else out real quick, get it to the top of the tool cart, and we're going to finish this discussion. Let's get it. All right, now what you're looking at, this is the INGERSOLL 118 Max, all right? And this is a pneumatic air hammer, okay, by INGERSOLL RAND. So, when it comes to certain services that are provided depending upon what type of work, that you technically do, as you can see, just so to say, a tool like this has not been outweighed by cordless just yet. And another thing is that, in my opinion, I don't think that, they have the battery source, to push this continuously, the way that it could possibly be used in certain areas at certain particular times. I still haven't seen a design just yet. Okay, but this is, another reason why the cordless is technically not beating or outweighing, air pneumatic. Even just so to say how you're looking at this Milton air chuck, okay, which is digital. Nowadays, you actually have cordless inflators, okay? But see, the thing about that is that them cordless inflators that take batteries, it take a certain amount of time to push a certain foot-pound per pressure, okay? So the speed efficiency is never going to be the same as you using an actual real compressor, all right, with a real actual air chuck and things like that. So I still don't see, the cordless outbeating or outweighing. Another thing that I like to mention in this video is that anytime the discussion is, aroused by other individuals where they turn around and they state, well, I got rid of all my pneumatic impacts and I'm going all cordless, okay? Now, when I hear something like that and when I technically think about it, all right, for those individuals who do that, they've been in the field for quite some time, all right? And another thing is that they do a certain particular line of work where that it may not always necessarily require for them to actually have a pneumatic impact where they can actually get away with using a cordless. But then you have to keep this into consideration that they've been in the field for a little while, right? And they may have the necessary tools or the finances, to back certain battery equipment behind the tools. Each tool is expensive, on its own, and it comes with a little premium depending upon if you're buying them in sets or bare tools. But when it comes to the batteries is basically, almost outweighing the tools themselves. All right. So in most cases, when those conversations are aroused, the very first thing an individual turns around and says is that, well, yeah, I go to the cordless due to the lack of the air holes. Okay. I never really hear too much that, I go to the cordless over the pneumatic because the cordless outperforms the pneumatic. Okay. Now, when I have this 1/2-inch drive cordless Milwaukee high torque sitting at the top of the tool cart, right? And then I have the same drive size in the INGERSOLL RAND, the 2235Q Max over there, all right? The purpose and the reason of me having this particular tool here is that when I cannot remove something, okay, with this 1/2-inch drive, more than likely this high torque will remove it, okay? But that's not the only necessary reason why I purchased this tool. I also purchased this tool for the convenience of me being outside of the shop where airlines is not accessible, with me still being able to provide service and get a job done. Okay, so this is where some of these tools come into play. Just like, so to say, the die grinder. Okay, I had the die grinder for quite some time, but in the professional shop, in the professional settings, I always use the Mac Air Pneumatic die grinder, even though all along I would have the Milwaukee M12 sitting inside the tool cart. This tool was used more outside of the shop than it actually was in the shop because of the configuration layout of the shop that I worked in, where that there was lines all over the place. I used to work from 4 different bays that provided lines. Each bay in the facility I worked in provided lines, which there were 24 bays, I believe, at the shop that I previously worked at, okay? And throughout all the bays, there was only like 7 of us. There was only like 7 techs amongst 24 bays, okay? So I used to work from 4 different areas. Sometimes I would have 2 guns hooked up at the same time. I may have another particular gun hooked up, but there has been some videos in the past, in the beginning when I first started putting content out on this channel, where that there's been quite a few times where I may have possibly used this 3/8 on an application, testing it out, using it on another application that I know that it's not designed for, but I wanted to technically see the limitations and then try to go to one of the cordless and see whether the cordless would remove it, to see whether the performance was better. Just as well as with the half-inch drive, there's been quite a few situations that I had, not just with this particular pneumatic impact, but just so to say, two other pneumatic impacts just as well. Another Mac and a Stillman Pro half-inch drive pneumatic impact, where that I've had issues with removing certain things with those three different pneumatics, but I had to go to the Milwaukee, all right, high torque, and the Milwaukee spin things off like butter. And some previous videos I was fortunate enough to catch a little footage here and there, you know, as far as certain particular jobs when I was capable of. Unfortunately, I never caught, you know, everything that I would have technically liked in order to demonstrate and show. You know, some people question the fact whether I use my tools there, you know, looking in on the channel, you know, quite late. But if they followed my videos, or they went to the very beginning, you know, I used to record every day in a professional shop. So as far as me using my tools and where I get my tools, and, you know, I get a lot of different funny comments sometimes. You know, I don't entertain it because I realize that, you know, they're looking in on the channel for the very first time. They don't know that I've been doing this. I'm a little new to making content on YouTube, but I've been doing this for quite a while. Okay. Another thing to mention, just a few days ago, I just actually happened to go to my other storage unit, right, that I have located in another state. And just as well as I demonstrate and I show a lot of equipment from this particular storage, I actually have a lot of different equipment located somewhere else. And I was in and out. I didn't have, you know, much time, you know, to be there. All right. But one thing that I did take notice to, you know, that I actually did have there, that I use, you know, a whole lot in the past. All right. But in these videos, you're seeing, you know, pneumatic impacts, you're seeing cordless. All right. But when I was just there, and I should have brought it back with me, so because it would have been a good thing for me to have it in this video, but to show you how I actually have an INGERSOLL RAND impact that is a corded impact. All right. Which I still kept, you know, all of these years. I've had it since the early 2000s. You know, I broke a lot of lugs. I cracked a lot of sockets from chrome to, you know, impacts, you know, back then when I lacked certain impacts, and technically at a particular time I may have had to use a chrome socket. Yeah, I've cracked a few, just as well as I also cracked and shattered some impact sockets. But, you know, just to give an example, you know, between having the cordless and having the air, you know, if I had the corded INGERSOLL, you know, that tool is going to run continuously until, you know, whatever you have it plugged up to, there's a blackout. I don't have to worry about no charge. So that's the thing when it comes to these cordless. So, you know, just keep that in mind, you know, when trying to make a decision in which direction you want to lean in when obtaining some of your equipment, and get an understanding for what type of job, you know, that you're going to work at, and what your function is going to be on that job before you decide to start spending. All right. So we're going to end this video right about here. Okay, today is Thursday. The weekend is almost here. All right, everybody, enjoy the rest of the evening. All right, keep it a safe and a blessed one. And until that next one, we're going to check you later. Peace.